Our hearts are with the people of Laval, especially the families and loved ones of everyone affected by the tragic bus crash Wednesday morning. From the team at Field Pass Hockey, we stand with you.
Five hosts, four divisions, all battling it out for the Holy Grail of the American Hockey League, the Calder Cup. This is the Holy Grail Podcast. Here are your hosts, Jeremy Paul, Zack Power, Andrew Rinaldi, Corey Swartz, and Deana Weinheimer.
Hello and welcome to episode 53 of Field Pass Hockey's The Holy Grail. And in this week, we'll be recapping some of the things that happened over the past week in the AHL and around. And this is the episode for February 9th, 2023. Now, to kind of introduce us a little bit to you, if you're joining us for the first time or just to refamiliarize, I'm going to go around the horn a little bit and I'm going to ask each one of our hosts an introductory question. So, in the spirit of the All-Star event that happened this past weekend, what event would you win in the skills competition? And yes, you can make it up as you go.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm Corey Swartz. I think I would win like the painfully average award because like I always feel that like, at least when it comes to hockey, like I always tell people like I'm serviceable, like I can skate, I can do the things, but like if you're looking for like Wayne Gretzky, I am not. Let's just put it that way. So I think that I would go somewhere like, I was initially when you said I'm like, oh, I'd either win the fall most award or miss the net most. I'm like, well, I'd like to think I can hit the net at least and, look serviceable. So we'll go painfully average.
I'm Zach Martin, and for me, I guess I would probably win the talks too much about hockey award. Like for me, it's just like because I talk a lot as it to begin with, but for the fact that I talk about hockey so much, people are just like, "Oh, great!" It's just him talking about hockey again. So I think that's kind of like what would be my thing. Is just I love the sport too much, and I talk about it way too much, and to the point where people are like, "All right, cool, thanks, bye," and stuff like that. So. Yeah,
I get that. Maybe I can speak as a runner-up for that one. But for me, I would like to say that I'm the intermission chef. I can't watch too many hockey games without having to stop in the intermission for a snack or even making something. Like I'm covering the Marlies, and I got the Marlies on one screen, and I got like a pot of goulash in another. So you know what? I'm all for it, and that's what I would win in the skills competition. So we got a little bit to get to, but we'll move into our news recap of the week, and Corey will start us off.
Yeah, absolutely. So for news recap, this weekend, I should say, was obviously the AHL All-Star Game, which is pretty much going to be the theme of this episode. But we had some really great words from Scott Howson, the president of the AHL, who said in his league address that this year will set the record revenue by any metric. And it comes as obviously the league has expanded to a new high of 32 teams. He expects that revenue mark to be finalized by the end of this season. And he also, ruled out any market changes in the near future. He said that they're going to have to look into any other realignment for the Pacific and Central divisions, which is good. But, it's good to see them set at, 32 teams. And, of course, you can find all of your AHL All-Star coverage at fieldpasshockey.com.
For sure. And we do have a milestone alert this week. Ontario Reigns prospect TJ Tynan has hit 500 career points in the AHL. Some of his notable past work includes stints with Colorado, Springfield, Chicago, and Lake Erie. So congratulations to him.
Unfortunately, we do have some sad news to talk about today. Torrey Mann has been dropped by the Belleville Senators this past week after going 17-22-5 to start the season. Assistant coach David Bell will take over on the interim basis for the Senators.
And it's certainly strange to see some midseason shakeups, especially in the AHL. Usually that's kind of waited for the off season. But we'll get right into it, and we'll move into our swipe left or swipe right segment. And we'll get Corey to start us off again.
Sure, yeah. So I'm all for chaos here. We all know that we live for chaos on this podcast here for sure. But I was a little bit disappointed after like the soaring highs that we seem to have during the All-Star game on Monday, that the game ended on kind of to me not so high, with the last game kind of being truncated as a result. I mean, obviously who can account for an 11 round shootout in an All-Star game, right? But it sort of felt like that last game with the Atlantic and the North was kind of the final game. Then there was just kind of this like, how many minutes was it? Like 6 minutes or so that they ended up playing that final game. I would have kind of preferred if it was a time issue, which was my understanding that it was. I say that the last game should always be sudden death. First goal wins. So I mean, last night it ended up being 1-0, right? But my thinking is India obviously they're still trying to nail down this format as it is. It's been a while, of course, too. But I would like to see it be, if it's a time crunch, let's just go to first goal wins.
Yeah, no, I would say swipe right. I mean, if it's going to be a time constraint issue, yeah, I definitely say sudden death would be the way to go. Or even then, I would say maybe put down like a couple minutes, like say like 4 minutes of regular game, and then like 2 minutes of a sudden death. Like whoever scores in that time frame wins, or however it works out. If it's still 0-0, or if it's 1-0, maybe give it maybe the other team like a crunch of like score within this time frame. We'll figure it out or something like that. But I agree. If you're gonna worry about time being an issue, I definitely say maybe look into a sudden death type situation. So yeah, I completely agree with you, Corey, on that one.
I'm going to swipe right as well. I do believe that it was a time issue that they were under, and be it for whatever reason. I can almost get behind too as well the idea of eliminating that 11 round shootout a little bit, or even finding
Yeah.
something else. I don't know, right? But I'm all for it. It just kind of felt rushed and is like awkward, right? Like I don't know if you guys all like sat there and like, oh, this is really okay. So that was kind of my take on it. But yeah, I'm all for it, and I'll swipe right on it.
And maybe
Yeah,
the answer is revisiting the format at some point too, right? Like it was just a longer overall thing than maybe the NHL's was, where like, they had shootouts, they had two ties. I mean, I don't know how often that happens in shootouts, but maybe it's just a little bit of tweaking. Like the flow and everything else was great. So I don't even, want to sound like I'm ragging on it at all. But
yeah.
that was just one of the things I felt like I was kind of like, man, if I, I felt like if I went to the restroom and wasn't aware of it, like, it's like, oh, it's suddenly over type of thing. So I just felt a little bit bitter about it. That's all.
Yeah, I would say probably the shootout, that live around shootout kind of like took too much time. I would say after a while, like maybe like figure out how to crunch that down, or I don't know, and end it in a better way than having that take up so much of your time. Because 11 rounds is a little much. I would say if you couldn't figure it after 5, figure something else out, or do like take a tie break type situation, like hardest shot, or at least
No
something.
goalies, hit the post only.
Yeah, something like if you can't make it after 5 rounds, maybe switch it up to like a skills thing where it's like, all right, if you whoever hits it the hardest,
Pull the
it.
goalies, and first one to shoot wins.
Yeah, something. I don't know. It's just it's something we
But
elaborate on that.
I think about the average viewer. Like, this is a great opportunity for the AHL to present and promote the league that it is. And when you're kind of left sitting on your couch, kind of scratching your head, wondering what happened to this game, right? That might be a little bit awkward.
Yeah, no, definitely for sure. So, but yeah, definitely something to consider in the future for how to figure out time constraints and shootout lengths. Because yeah, that 11 rounder was a little unnecessary for an All Star game. But speaking of the All Star game, for me, I honestly think the AHL overall for the entire weekend, skills, the game itself, just the festivities even around it, I think they absolutely blew it out of the water. I think that the AHL beyond killed the NHL in terms of just the whole format, the excitement level, the festivities, like even like letting fans be able to get autographs, during warm ups too from all the guys. It's like the NHL's was so chaotic. Like they would start one round, they would start one competition, then move to a different one, then move to a different one because they want to do like finals and stuff like that. And some of the competitions were kind of like okay, but they weren't the greatest. I think how the AHL did it was by far the best. I think it's honestly, I think the AHL's terms of just the weekend of all-star games and skills and everything else beats all other sports by far, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, be willing to go so far as to give that a super swipe, to be honest with you, because like it's like the integrity is there, right? That was kind of like the big thing. I kind of walked away from it. Like with the NHL, like they'd have like the breakaway challenge, or they'd have, you know, any kind of challenge, and like it just sort of felt like it was all, and it was, a little bit of a byproduct of the past, maybe, but like it felt like it was a show, right? Like like it was not about what Mitch Marner did on his shot. It was the fact that he was dressed funny and he got Roberto Luongo to show up in full goalie gear, right? Like the actual shot itself, what you're there for, was underwhelming. Whereas the AHL, it was, there was the 3-on-0 thing. It was, some of it defied conventions a little bit, but it was interesting, and the game was high energy. It felt like a playoff game there for a bit between the North and the Atlantic. You actually got to see some really cool hockey plays, like, the goaltenders catching it, dropping it, and flinging it down the ice like they were doing a couple of times there really stood out to me. And like it was free flowing and it was great. Reminded me of 3 Ice in a sense too, where it was just that constant action, no stops. It was a little different than your standard AHL 3-on-3 overtime type of thing because those are more strategic. So it was kind of like it was still hockey and it was highly entertaining hockey too. So it was like it was one of those things where like you can almost make a league out of this almost. So it was just a lot of fun, and I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and I'll also swipe right on the idea of that as well. I mean, I don't know. I do wonder how much, and Corey really just said it best, and how much of this is a show, right? Like it feels like something that you'd almost see in Vegas with the Golden Knights, right? Like at what point does it actually become less of look at how good we are compared to hey, look, I can come down with funny glasses on, right? Like that sort of thing. I think back to the All-Star games of previous, and even in the early 2000s and into the 2010s, even in the early portions of that, like I felt like you're watching just how good Crosby and Ovechkin are, right? Like you can see him dangle around the Gatorade cones or something like that. Like that was a really cool part of it. And that got just as much love from the fans as I think that anything did in Florida. So you know what? I'll swipe right on it. I do like the very traditional feel that the American Hockey League gave while giving it some kind of new feels as well. So yeah, I'm all for it. So my swipe this week, I've thought about it. We talked a little bit about the jerseys previously on the show, but after seeing it on the ice, I'm just not sold on the idea that these are all like Rocket Laval, like they unpeeled the R and then put like an all-star logo on it. I'm just not convinced. And I get like it's Laval's weekend, it's their turn, but like I don't know. I don't like the idea of like just slapping the all-star logo on top of someone else's jersey or what would be like a third jersey for them and calling it a day. So I don't like the all-star logos, what I'm trying to say, long and short.
Yeah, I'd go with the swipe right on that. It felt like, and the fact they have to make like 4 different variants of the jerseys just kind of removes that identity for it. Like when you look close, like, you watch enough AHL hockey, you'll look at the jersey and be like, oh yeah, it's very definitely a Laval color, but the Laval color is also the same kind of color scheme that the AHL itself has. So it's sort of, you kind of to look a little bit hard. It looked better when it was in like, the one team that had the red as the primary color, right? But like, I agree. It's one of those things I'd almost rather them do something wholly different, especially now that you have to make 4. I mean, it worked when it was just 2, but as soon as you start to get in, and then it's hard to tell who's who, and the mismatched colors. It wasn't as bad as the NHL. I will say that, but it was still pretty rough to try to tell who was who out there sometimes.
Yeah, no, I definitely swipe right as well. I mean, if I kind of miss when it used to be like the Eastern Conference, Western Conference, how they did in the NHL, where it was like, okay, here's the 2 teams, or if it's like North America against World, stuff like that. Like I know they want to kind of try to differentiate between like the 4 divisions, but like if you're gonna do that, I would definitely agree with what Corey said. Like do different colors for every division. Don't make just a small variant color change. and that just be it. Like make every single one different in some way, or like I said, just go back to like an East-West or North against World, like North America against World type thing, where it's like it's 2 jerseys, all the guys are kind of grouped together and go from there. It's just when you try to do the 4 divisions, for me, it's a little too chaotic in terms of trying to figure out who's who and all that, and all the different jerseys you got to make and stuff like that. It's like, as they say, simple is good, like less is more. So I kind of think that the AHL in this case should have went less is more if they're going to keep all the color schemes somewhat close together. So yeah, I definitely swipe right on that.
It'd be cool if they had like the lead time for it. Maybe they could like let some of the guys design a jersey. Like it doesn't have to be too crazy. Throw them in a NHL 23 jersey designer or something like that. Have a little bit of personality to them, so it's not just white on blue, blue on white, red on blue. Have a little flair to it, maybe, or heck, we make the divisions like a certain color scheme. Maybe. I mean, that could work too.
Yeah, at least something to where you can see a difference rather than just a basic, like what you said. Like it's a little bit of a color change between like North and the North and the Atlantic and like the Pacific and the Central. Like at least make it distinguishable enough to where like, okay, we know who's on the ice. Because once you have the 2 color schemes so close together, even then I'd be if I was one of those guys, I'd be confused. Like, are you on my team or are you on the other team? Especially if it's like the red on white or the white on red, because like you're going so fast, you don't know which is which. When you're skating that fast. So yeah, they should at least a little bit a better change in difference of colors rather than just, oh, here's a slight tweak. Have fun figuring it out.
And I'll say this, maybe we can like expand it a little bit to like a player from each team makes a jersey. All right. And the AHL said to him, like, all right, you guys are making a North division, so I want it to be red. Right. And, you guys are going to make an Atlantic division. I want that to be green. Right. Like that sort of thing. Like that could be kind of cool, and have the fans vote on it. Right. So you got 5 or 6 different jerseys to choose from that the fans can go online. They could pick which one. It was, say Joseph Wool or Lucas Dostal went out and made a jersey, and now you have to pick between them. Right. Like that would be the kind of thing that I would like to see, but we'll have to,
you know what? Piggybacking off that, whoever, like, say if it's a certain guy who wins, maybe do like a certain charity that he picks wins this amount of money if his jersey gets picked. Have like a cool little incentive for the fans to pick the ones that they like, but then also be like, okay, whoever wins, a charity makes some money off it too. So I mean, there's so many layers you can do with having a more interactive jersey experience for the fans.
For sure. And speaking of donations as well, a big shout out to Joseph Wool, who actually donated money out of his own account for a children's charity for every save that he made during the All-Star game. So it's good to see players do stuff like that, especially during that time. We're going to switch things over, and we have a couple of special guests this week. It's a little bit different than what you might normally be expecting, but we've had some crew from the Field Pass Hockey Network who were in Laval for the AHL All-Star Classic. They were able to catch up with a couple of players, and we're going to take you inside the dressing room.
What is the worst jersey number somebody could have?
55.
35? 55. Okay.
Gotta be something outrageous, like 95 or something.
So if you had to choose someone to watch your pet on your team, who would you want to watch them? Who would you not want to watch them?
Probably I would want Jake Gaudette to watch my pet, and I wouldn't want Roman Ashon, his brother, to watch my pet. He's
okay.
Completely unreliable.
I'd probably let Vinny Lettieri, he'd watch my pet. And I would not let Nick Wolf would not do all of that.
On the bus, who's the best seatmate? Who's the worst?
I'm going to go with Nick Wolf. Nick Wolf's a good seatmate. And then the worst would be Bussy, because he's bad at poker.
A good seatmate would be Cole Clayton.
Okay.
He's a good seatmate. And the worst seatmate would be Billy Sweezy.
Sweezy, why's that?
Yeah, he's an aggressive guy. He's full of energy.
I could see that.
Yeah.
So last concert you went to?
I went to the Lumineers end of the summer this summer.
Nice.
Chainsmokers.
Okay. And if you could choose your own goal song, what would it be?
I always go with Can't Stop, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Okay.
I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about that.
Yeah, this is a stumper for some
Yeah,
people,
that
for
is
sure.
that is tough. Probably something Nickelback.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I know, you just played last night. What has that experience been like trying to, first of all, you just learned yesterday you're coming, right?
Yeah.
So what was that like finding that out? Did you have to change any plans? Who organized all that travel for you?
Yeah, I was supposed to go to LA, but the GM of Cleveland helped me, and they organized the travel for me and stuff. So it went all smoothly. I left this morning from Cleveland, and there was another guy on my flight that we played against last night, so it was good.
Perfect.
TikTok fun.
And how about you? How was that travel experience been like?
We played in Utica last night, and then took a car service this morning. Got in about 2. Went through speed, so not too bad.
Okay. And then if you guys could invent an event to put inside the skills competition that you think you'd be good at, what would it be?
I feel like I'd be a pretty good figure skater, so maybe like a little figure skating event. Maybe.
A little cross sport?
Get the other skates going.
Yeah. I'd have to go with him on that one. I think something to do with the edges.
So, what is the worst jersey number someone could have?
That's a good one. I feel like if you're not a goalie, anything in the 30s is weird. Our assistant coach, Pat Weller, was 33.
Okay.
So he kind of gets made fun of for being a number 33 guy.
So if you needed to have someone pet sit or babysit, who would you not want to do that on your team?
Probably Lapierre, Iorio, and Rubinski. 3 rookies in the house.
Okay. Flip side, who would be the best?
Malenstein.
Okay.
He's got some good dogs.
Nice. Favorite hockey movie?
I just recently watched Goon again, and I think that's just hilarious, and I love it.
Perfect choice. Last concert you went to?
Zack Brown Band at Fenway Park. Awesome, always a good time.
Yeah, that's on my bucket list for sure. Favorite or dream vacation?
Probably a couple weeks in Italy or over in Europe somewhere. Haven't been over there yet. Obviously, I'm Italian. Would love to see that place and travel a little bit over there, see what the world's like.
Nice. If you could choose your own goal song, what would it be?
I think "Dogs Out" by DMX.
Okay.
Ever heard of that one?
Yeah.
It's a throwback.
I have.
But,
It is.
We listen to it a lot back home.
Nice. Is there anyone not from Hershey that you're excited to meet or play with or against this
I
weekend?
mean, we play against Wilkes and Lehigh so often during the season, so it's actually nice to play alongside a guy like Nylander or Forrester, and it's hard, those types of guys. And obviously, everybody on the East, you play against them once, and they're tough, but obviously those are rival teams, and you always see them every single night almost, and they're tearing you up on the score sheet, so it's nice to be on the same team and try and beat up on some other conferences this week.
Perfect. And then, just what has the travel experience been like? I know it's been such a tight turn for a lot of teams, but how was it like getting here?
It was tough, obviously. We had Friday, Saturday games, just slept a couple hours, hopped on a flight, connecting flight, got here, and just kind of running around. Haven't really got to eat or do anything really, so definitely starving, that's for sure. But it's fun meeting all the guys. Everyone's really nice, cool, and beautiful facility. And we're looking forward to having a lot of fun.
What is the worst jersey number somebody could have?
I think I was given number 23 my first camp. I thought that was pretty bad. It's hard to have a number 23 when this is in North Carolina as well. So that's where MJ's famous. North Carolina, UNC. It's hard to wear number 23 in hockey when it's so famous in basketball. So I think that one's pretty bad.
Okay, so you wanted to go out for a night. You need to find a babysitter on the team. Who would you pick? And who would be the last one on your list?
On my team in Charlotte?
Yes.
I'd probably one of my optimal choices would be one of the guys that has kids. They know what's going on. They've been through that before. Probably the guy I wouldn't want would be sort of. He's a space cadet, so I wouldn't trust him with that. So he's actually supposed to be dog sitting one of the guy's dogs this week, so we'll see what happens.
Oh no!
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Who is your favorite seatmate on the bus?
We have a pretty good crew of older guys in the back of the bus right now. We got Dolps, Potato, Berube, Mayhew, Bunneman. It's a pretty good crew we got going back there. We got some characters. Potato's a character. He's a Long Island guy, so he's got the accent and he's an outgoing personality, so he's a lot of fun.
Sure. Favorite city or arena in the American Hockey League?
Favorite city? It's hard because I feel like a lot of the great cities are out west and we don't get to go out there. So I'll say Charlotte for out east. It's great. It's a great spot. I played there 10, 12 years ago and it was awesome then. It's even better now. Arena? I think here would probably be pretty good. I've never played here though, so this will be my first time, but I think I've heard that it's really great here.
Is there anyone not from the Checkers that you are excited to either get to meet or play with or against this weekend?
I'm looking forward to seeing the Western guys. You kind of hear about a lot of those guys, but we don't play any of them. So it's our first look at that squad, and you see there's some really good teams out there. So looking forward to seeing some of those guys. That TJ Tynan, I don't know if he's here or not. Cormac is here, yeah. I would assume they're here because they both have they're pretty good players and they're having pretty good years. So.
And we do have a special surprise, someone who is just back from Laval and someone who is very near and dear to the Holy Grail, and you know her very well. Deana Weinheimer joins us now. Deana, first we'll get going by asking you, how was the All-Star event?
It was just, I don't even know how to really sum it up at this point because it was such a blur of 2 days of events and fun and pageantry. And I hate to use the term electric because it's so overused, but if there was ever an electric atmosphere, it was in Place Belle this weekend. It was amazing, way more than I ever expected, way less sleep than I expected, but it was wonderful. I mean, just a well put on show by the American Hockey League and the Laval Rocket. They've been waiting for several years. We know this All-Star game was postponed twice. And you could just feel that release, that excitement for the league to be back together and finally for Laval to get their moment in the sun here.
Yeah, just from all the photos, the videos and stuff that we've seen, it looked like it was just a great time to play, a great place to be, even with all the snow, and it was probably really cold. But I do have to say that it seems like the mascots kind of stole the show. Over the weekend. I know we kind of talked about it a little bit on Twitter of just like Chubby having some problems with the with some taffy there, but like, what would you say in terms of like just what was it like being around the mascots and just the atmosphere that they were kind of bringing inside and probably outside around the events overall?
So the mascots, like, it was their show, right? It was, especially on that skills competition day, out on the red carpet with the players. And by the way, I did get to experience what it feels like when Celsius and Fahrenheit finally mean the same thing, aka -40. I had to walk a quarter mile in that. My glass lenses froze over multiple times. That was not a good day. But anyway, back to the mascots. But like on that day, that was their show. The fans loved them. They had a Ferris wheel set up on the plaza in front of Place Belle. And here go the mascots up the ramp and piling into the gondolas. If you go to fieldpasshockey.com to our photo galleries, Andrew Fielder got some amazing shots of these mascots just having their time, in this gallery, and the fans loved them. It was so cute because on the red carpet, right before the players got to the fans, all the mascots lined up opposite of where I was, where Andrew Rinaldi was, where other media were stationed. And every time one of their guys got called up, here they are coming off the bus down the red carpet, they're jumping. Naughty went and tackle hug Nico Dawes. It was so much fun. I mean, those guys, those mascots were just having the time of their lives. It was great. I mean, and then inside it was chaos. I got to ride in an elevator with Chubby, just adorable. I love him. I guess Naughty was throwing popcorn at people. It was just a lot of fun. Then of course Griff from the Griffins just chucking t-shirts like always, made it all the way across the ice. It was pretty impressive.
So who would you say was your MVP of the mascots for the weekend if you had to pick one? The one who brought it the most?
My heart goes with Chubby, but a very close second is Naughty.
You know what? I'm here for it. As the Charlotte Checkers guy, I'm so glad Chubby just brought it because he brings it every game. So it's just it sounds about right. It tracks.
Yeah, if I have to give a bronze, it would have to probably be Melvin. But I did see Fuego. He was shaking that tail feather just a little bit. He made a nice debut at the All-Star game as well.
Well, my question was a little bit, as I don't think we got to talk about it very much so far tonight, but kind of like in between the two events, you blink and you miss it because it was such a fast weekend there. But we kind of got to see something a little different with the AHL Hall of Fame induction ceremony there too. I know my eyeballs were sweating a little bit, watching Keith Aucoin, and that great videos narrated by John Walton, the former Bears announcer and now voice of the Washington Capitals, as well as, a few great guys like Chris Bork and Brian Helmer make appearances in that video. And, just kind of getting to reminisce on all those good times, getting to see some of those guys, not just Aucoin, but, a lot of great AHL names get inducted. What was the ceremony like? It looked like it was a pretty intimate theater kind of style setup, but still a really great event to see.
Yeah, it was a very small theater. First of all, they had a band that was playing, not just kind of the little riff music whenever people are walking up to the stage or after introductions, but they played some really nice jazz standards, before that. It was so stick taps to that band. They were fantastic. But yeah, it was a very, very intimate, almost family style ceremony. It was focused around them being close with their families. It was in this small theater on a college campus there. But yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, eyes were sweating just a little bit. If you have a chance, go on the FPH or Field Pass Hockey Twitter account. We have videos of all of those acceptance speeches by all of the inductees. And Nolan Baumgartner's, oh my gosh, that was so emotional, and just the love and care that was shown by these inductees to their families. And you could just see all those years of the sacrifice and the hard work just kind of culminating into that moment.
So of course, Scott Howison spoke a little bit about the state of the league in his address. Tell me, what was kind of the big standout and the highlight from that?
Well, I had a chance to ask him. One big thing was on my mind because there have been some rumors about potential expansion. At least one market, maybe possibly making a move to get an AHL team. But the biggest thing that I took away was they are at 32. They are happy with 32 teams. At this point, basically the stance from the league is there will not be an expansion awarded unless the NHL makes a corresponding move. But they are very happy with their just how it's set up media wise with having a streaming service. A question was asked, will they ever try to go after, the TSNs of the world, the NHL networks to try to get more. And they are truly embracing this. Over the last 5 years, we have had such a huge outbreak in streaming services. So they're really focusing on how can they make their product better and more accessible. So that's going to be something moving forward with them. Another big thing is now talking about growth. How can they grow this league, grow this product? Because honestly, since Scott Housen took over as CEO and president from the retiring Dave Andrews, also who was inducted into the AHL Hall of Fame after, a long wait too, since we've had the past two postponed here. Basically they were just getting by. They were fighting fire after fire with this pandemic. Of course, with that, we had lower attendance, lower dollars coming in, but now that things are back to normal, now they're going to focus on growing the league. There's a real push towards diversity, which they showed by bringing in some trainers to work with, professional hockey staff. So basically the big message going forward is they are happy where they are. We talked to Scott Housen on our interview with him about realignment. That was asked again. Basically same thing. The Pacific teams came in to play in the Pacific. If you move any of them out, that's going to cause what he called a strain on the Central Division, having to, possibly fly to Colorado for more games or to Tucson for more games. So basically, in terms of the way that the league is set up with the teams and the divisions, that is staying the same. And just the league is healthy, it's thriving, and it's going to be growing.
That's such a great juxtaposition, because going into the game, I had seen a memory of mine that, was 2 years ago exactly to the day that game was played yesterday, that, for the Bears at least, that they'd come back from the COVID pause 2 years ago exactly. And then to read that statement, it's like, wow, it's so great to see things kind of, getting back on track after such a long time. But my focus shifts a little bit to the game. And I really want to hear what it was like to be in the building during that 11-round shootout, because it almost seemed like fan demand caused that shootout to go from a 3-round tie to being, who's going to win. It kind of honestly felt like a playoff atmosphere in there, just watching it from AHL TV. What was it like being there to see that sort of unfold live?
If it tells you anything, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, just hearing you ask that question. So I forget who the player was. One of the players, and I wish I could remember, but again, the past 48-ish hours have been such a blur here. But one of the players kind of went and made that initial ask, and then I think the fans kind of rallied around that, and the officials could not say no at that point. This is a game for these players, for these fans. Let's keep it going. And between the lights, the music, whoever does the DJ at Plus Bell, oh my gosh, he is not getting paid enough. They were amazing with the music, and the fans were engaged at every single second, it seemed like. And yeah, just the last time I can remember an atmosphere like that was back at the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Sorry to bring this up, Corey. 2016, that game where Cleveland won the Calder Cup. That is the most comparable, but I think this might have actually been louder.
So speaking of like the atmosphere and stuff like that, because I don't know if you caught any of the NHL All-Star game or the competitions and stuff like that. Probably not, since you were kind of busy. But for us who aren't in Laval and stuff like that, and just seeing how the two played out, it seemed like the AHL absolutely killed it in terms of just how it was ran, how the competitions were just fun from start to finish. Like from your opinion, like what did you think of like how the skills ran, how the All-Star game was run? Like, do you think the AHL kind of has like found the format that basically all the other sports are kind of having to figure out, maybe even better than what the NHL's done over the last few years?
Well, with the AHL skills competition, it's very traditional in how they run it, right? It's very traditional skills. And honestly, someone asked Scott Housen about that in his press conference on Monday as well. And, I kind of agree with him when it's like, okay, we understand why the NHL might have to go a little bit gimmicky, but, they're trying something new. Every year they try something new to see what works, what doesn't. And whenever you have that kind of TV backing, you kind of need to do that. But the way that the AHL All-Star skills competition was ran was very tight, very entertaining. The players obviously had a good time, and they were in their comfort zones. They were doing skills that they know, and they're not forced to try to have to one up each other by being an extra showman. Let's just go out there, see these players do their skills and entertain the fans that way. And it really works.
Yeah, that was something we mentioned a little bit earlier in our swipe left or swipe right segment. I got to ask you, though, the tough questions always come. Poutine, scale of 1 to 10. Got to hear it as the Canadian. Poutine or Poutine. Got to hear it. What's the grade?
So the only one I only was able to get one serving of it. 10. Absolutely 10. I mean, and I've had poutine up in Canada before, but not Quebec poutine. Oh my gosh, yeah, 10. Wasn't too not too sugar. Oh my gosh, wasn't too salty. It was like a nice bounce, perfect melt on the cheese. It was just, especially since that was the -40-degree day. That might have played into it a little bit, but yeah, 10.
Well,
easy.
To piggyback off that real quick, because I know we talked about it, I think off show. Were you able to get beaver tails at all?
No.
Oh, no.
We looked.
Oh,
but
no.
we couldn't find any.
Oh, well, I guess you got to make another trip to Canada for some beaver tail then, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's the cuisine up there was amazing. Yeah, really enjoyed it.
So I kind of have one more about the All-Star game itself. Was that the thing that stuck out to me was like I was watching a couple of different games last night. I couldn't take my eyes off of the All-Star game, and the reason for it to me was because not only was it 3-on-3, but it was like a chaos 3-on-3 compared to what we see in regular season AHL play, because it's always first goal wins. You see a little bit more of the strategical thing. It almost felt like AHL version of 3-ice almost. Like none of the goaltenders covered the puck. They always played it. We saw one of the goaltenders make a couple of big saves, drop the puck and dish it up, and it went down for a goal type of thing. Desal was the goaltender who just came to mind on that one. How do you think, like, is this something that you think that like we should be taking notes on? You could start up a different variation of play, or like, save it for the All-Star game. Like if we save, like, what's your opinion on how different that style was, and would you like to see it like, brought to the forefront some other way by the AHL possibly?
So not long into that style of play, so Andrew Rinaldi, he and I were up in the press box. We're just kind of leaning back, and basically at the same time, we're like, yeah, this is the way 3-on-3 should be played. It was so entertaining. And there was one time where that old habit, I don't even remember who, but it was just one time where that cycle back to their own defensive zone kicked in. And we're just, yep, there it is. We knew it would sneak in at some point. Yeah, it was so much more entertaining. And I don't know, I would love to see that style of 3-on-3 play more. Just because it isn't so methodical and boring. And honestly, I think it might catch another team by surprise if someone plays with that style, because they're almost counting on you to eventually go cycle back, then try to go back in. That's when they'll try to make you turn over the puck. And, maybe a little bit of creativity there isn't a bad thing. Oh, you're muted, Zach.
You can't read lips?
Not after the short amount of sleep that I've had over the last few days.
I got to ask you, Deana, who won the All-Star event? What team won personality-wise for you, the skill-wise, the game? What one team won it?
Well, if I had to give like an individual award, it would have to go from a fan standpoint to Anthony Richard. Of course, local guy. The fans loved him. The fans really rallied around all of the Quebec-born or players that might have grown up in Quebec. But in terms of like a showmanship, award, that would go hands down to Thomas Bordelot. He just had this vibe about him all weekend that I could not take his eyes off of him. Like, at some point he was down there doing little showy things with one hand on the stick. He was just playing it up for everybody, having a great time. And obviously I need to catch more of his play, because if it's even as half as entertaining as it was in Laval, and those San Jose Barracuda fans are spoiled.
For sure. Well, Deana, we want to thank you so much for hopping in this week. We look forward to having you back on full-time next week, back in the moderator chair.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
All right. So it's time to move into our Who's Hot and Who's Not edition for the All-Star Classic. Now, there wasn't anybody who really wasn't a not. So this is kind of just like Who's Hot in the All-Star edition. And we'll start with Corey.
Yeah, so it was great. We just talked about him a little bit ago, but Ethan Frank was killing it at the All-Star game. It was impressive. I was kind of thinking of this like ahead of the weekend, like what skills would each player take part in. And like the first one I automatically put was Ethan Frank with the fastest skater. But I didn't realize how fast he would actually be. He demolished the fastest skater record, not just for the day, but all time, going around the rink at 12.915 seconds. Which, you know, there's been a lot of times just watching him this season where I can tell you that he looks a step faster than everybody else. Where, like, you know, he'll start off well behind the guy and you can just feel he's going to catch up to him. So it was great to see him, you know, really put that on display in an event that's kind of notorious for, you know, being a little bit difficult there to, you know, really display it. And there were some fast skaters in that competition there as well. A couple of guys that were, you know, hardly anything slower than him. So there's a lot of fast guys there. And then, you know, I was talking about with Zach here over the weekend where he teamed up with Alex Belzile and Riley Nash. And those guys scored 3 goals on all 3 attempts. And I think it was like all 3 different guys that scored one of the goals. Like it just, you know, totally unselfish between the 3 of them. And then, you know, you fast forward to the game and he had, you know, a goal during one of the opening rounds. And then in that 11-round shootout, he was one of the guys that scored to keep it going for a little while until Alex Nylander could end it. And I have to give an honorable mention to former Hershey Bear and now current Texas Stars forward Riley Barber, who was also on fire this past, you know, during the game. He scored 3 goals a day before his birthday, which is, you know, today as we're recording this on February 7th. So happy birthday to Riley Barber. And, you know, he was outstanding. I had 0 doubts about that, having watched him as long as we got to watch him in Hershey here. So he's been phenomenal. And one wild stat I can share with you guys about Ethan Frank is that prior to him taking that shootout attempt in the All-Star game, he has never taken a shootout attempt in the AHL in his career yet, which includes, you know, all of his games this season and the 5 he played in last year and is, you know, getting his feet wet there. So I think that Todd Nelson, who was the head coach for the Atlantic Division in that game, is probably going to put him in next time the Bears get to a skills competition. Now, of course, that's just because the Bears haven't gone to shootouts 2 tons here this season, but it was still a very interesting stat. I was surprised to learn there myself.
Yeah, no, like we were talking about for the 3-on-0, like that was insane how good those 3 played together. It was like the Conehead line from Miracle, where it's like pass, shoot, score. That's basically what it was. Like even you said it. It's like it felt like all those 3 of those guys played together for a long time. So they were just lights out. So no, that was Ethan Frank just played absolutely out of his mind through the entire weekend. So maybe see a little bit more shootout attempts from him. Who knows? So I mean, some definitely to consider in the future for him.
I have to say, I was a little like not surprised, but like Todd Nelson was very eager to throw Alex Nylander into the shootout there. And I was like, well, that's kind of interesting, you know, considering the rivals. But I'm like, he's seen this guy like 10 times already this season, most likely at this point. Like, I was thinking to myself, he probably is just like, yeah, if I throw this guy out there, he's money like he was against us all season. So it was funny to see the interdivision lines kind of get thrown out the window just for one time only, honestly, too.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you know what? If it works, why not go for it? Let's see how it plays out for my advantage instead of me being on the disadvantage of seeing that all the time. So, hey, can't go wrong with that. For me, Darren Radish of the Syracuse Crunch, he absolutely lit it up on the hardest shot competition. His first attempt was 101.8 miles per hour. And then he goes on his second attempt and beats it and wins with 102 miles per hour. But of course, everyone knows the record set by Martin Firk when he hit it at 109, which was, I think, you guys might have to remind me what year it was. Was it the 2018?
2020.
All-Star 2020. Okay, I knew it was recent. I just couldn't remember the year, but yeah, his was 109 miles per hour, which is still amazing. Which I don't think anyone's going to touch. But great job by Darren Rash of the crunch to 102 miles per hour. It like that's hard. Like I want more you can say to that. Like that's just putting a little mustard on that slapper. But yeah, great job to him. Goes and wins it, and just makes people a little weary about getting in front of those slap shots from Darren Radish over the season for sure.
I got one word for that: duck. And that's the way I was as a street hockey goalie. Like anytime someone's taking a slap shot, I'm like that, right? So
it's like nope.
Sound like Ilya Brizgalov out there.
That was me. That was me as a street hockey goalie. I'm here going with my hand down, in between the legs, right? And anytime someone takes a slap shot, I'm going for cover. But someone who hasn't taken any cover was Lucas Dostal during the All-Star event. And I mean, what more can you say? The shutouts during the games, like the game portion alone would have been enough for me to kind of say, yep, this is my guy. But even the skills competition, he showed that he had the chops. Everything from the diving poke checks all the way down to the assists that he had. I think he had 2 assists on the night. So I kind of looked at him in that. I've always been as hard as I am on San Diego, and I love to rip on San Diego, he really is the one piece that has kept them somewhat in a lot of games, right? And for him to be able to kind of show just how good he is, right? That alone means a lot to me. And you know what? I think that he had quite the performance. Time is coming for Anaheim to send him up and hopefully get into the NHL All-Star game. But you know what? It was quite the game for him. And he definitely did good. All right, and let's move now into our games of the week. And we'll start things off in the Atlantic, by the looks of it, with Corey.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting weekend that's shaping up here. I got like a 2-parter coming up here for you guys. But I'm looking at this pileup of teams in the Atlantic Division, and it finally seems like, after what seems like me being a broken record for the last couple of weeks, that somebody's starting to assert themselves. And it's going to be a measuring stick for those teams coming out of the All-Star break for Lehigh Valley as they host the Bridgeport Islanders. The Phantoms have been pretty good recently. I got to see them firsthand over the past weekend, and, it looks like a very different team than what we've seen, and that's saying something coming from a guy who's on matchup number 9 out of 14 still to go to finish up the season with. But, so they were able to pull ahead a little bit. But there's 2 big games in the docket of teams that are chasing them with the game up against Hartford this coming Friday and then this game on Saturday. It's 2 teams that, you like to see. If you're Lehigh Valley, you'd like to see them win to really say, hey, we're different now. We're that team that's going to be in the mix here. Might not be first, but, they're a solid lock at 4th to 5th maybe is where you'd like to finish on that one. But, again, if you're Hartford, if you're Bridgeport, you're saying, okay, yeah, you guys have been good, but we're just as good. And, particularly Hartford's been a, pretty obstinate team. They don't go down easy to anybody. And Bridgeport, they've been kind of up and down a little bit more down recently. So it's going to be 2 really interesting games to keep tabs on here over the weekend as it spells out the Atlantic Division for sure.
And Corey, I want to ask you this, and maybe Zach can talk to it as well, but what would kind of be the implications-wise for the standings if either one of these teams kind of pulled away? We talk so much about this being such a car crash weekend. I know Charlotte's got a series against Toronto a little bit, but I mean, what would be the implications of a couple of points here?
Yeah, absolutely. So for in the Atlantic, it's just those bottom four playoff spots that would play the play-in round. It's just been, outside of Charlotte asserting themselves, it's been kind of up for the taking, right? And we've been kind of looking for somebody, and it didn't really happen so much last year either, but you're looking for somebody to really just kind of take those reins and say, hey, we want to be a play not as just a team that can make the playoffs but can make it interesting. It puts the whole division on notice, right? Like we've seen Springfield's kind of not getting talked about in this equation. They've been on a historic run for their franchise, winning 8 games in a row, and suddenly everyone's kind of looking at them like, wow, these guys have gotten a lot of their talent back. They're improved. They're not going to roll over like they might have done earlier in the season. That's kind of the genius part of this playoff system here, is that instead of 4 teams make it, and it had it a couple of times. There's a 5th team that's pretty worthy that kind of misses as a result. Instead, you get to see these teams really make a case for themselves in the playoffs. And I do really think that at some point, one way or another, that the pretenders are kind of going to get separated from the contenders, right? You may have a 6th seed team that, okay, maybe a little bit weaker, but I really think that as far out as 5th place, anybody in the Atlantic is going to be dangerous for sure.
Yeah, no, 100%. I completely agree with that. I mean, because you look at, like Corey just said, Springfield's on an absolute tear right now, 8-2 in their last 10. I mean, you can't speak very much more highly about those guys. I mean, and like you said, even brought the Checkers. The Checkers are 5-0 right now. They just went through a 5-game road trip in the Empire State and knocked off Rochester, Syracuse, and Utica in 5 straight games, and they're on an absolute tear as well. 7-2-0-1 in their last 10. I mean, it definitely, because like we saw Wilkes-Barre Scranton was there for so long in that kind of like that 4-5-3 range, and now they're bottom of the division, which is kind of crazy to think about. And then you look at like Charlotte's 5 points up on Lehigh Valley. If Lehigh Valley loses a couple more games, that's going to put them that could, like what Corey said, pretenders from the contenders. That you could start seeing a separation of 4th to about the rest of the division if Lehigh Valley falls off a little bit, and if Hartford and Bridgeport kind of start cooling off, and if Wilkes-Barre continues their 0-3 run and they're 3-7 in the last 10. So it's definitely going to make things interesting in the Atlantic this weekend for sure.
One other little bit I'd like to add too is that there's even potential for like even more upheaval, right? Like I was looking at schedules for the remainder of the year here, and you got a team like Hershey that's still in first place. They have a tough schedule for the rest of the way out. I mean, they got 4 matchups with Charlotte left that are shaping up to be important ones. You've got 5 with an upstart Lehigh Valley that are still left, and you even have teams like Toronto. They haven't seen it all this season. They've been just as good, if not better in some cases, than Hershey has been, at least recently. Even Wilkes-Barre always gives Hershey a hard time. You could see if Hershey were to fall off, and I'm the biggest pumper of Hershey tires that there possibly is out here. I don't think that's going to happen, but you see the right combination of point swings and point losses. You have the potential for some real changes to what has been a pretty steady Atlantic division in that regard, at least with the top 2. And Providence is even in the mix too. I mean, they got some matchups with Hershey, lots of teams that don't go away. So I think it's going to be a fun race to watch in these last 27, 28 games for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because like Providence comes back down to Charlotte for a couple of games. Like you said, Hershey comes down for a 2-game set. I think it's like February 18th and 19th. So that's definitely going to make things very interesting, even in the top 3 with those 3 teams. Because like you said, like the points aren't so far up. Like I think Charlotte's like 9 points back of Providence. So how those 3 teams shake up, we could definitely see a more clustered top 3 and maybe like everyone else. So who really knows? But talking about Charlotte, they actually are one of my games of the week. They're actually going to be facing Toronto on the 10th and even more this week. And I think it'd be a good measuring stick for like a Marlies team who's been playing really well. And, they haven't really got to see very much of the Atlantic team. So I think it's a good seeing a team like Charlotte go up against a team like Toronto and see, okay, how is a team from the North going to stack up against an Atlantic division that's kind of making a case for being the toughest, but also the best division in the AHL right now. Then we're going to see what it looks like against a Marlies team who's been kind of running the show in the North. So I definitely say like that those games will be very interesting to watch. And even then, I think Syracuse and Laval are also another good one to watch too. Because I mean, Syracuse has 49 points. They're sitting in third, but Laval's at 44. They're only 5 points back, and they've been on a 5-2, 2-1 run. So I would even say like Laval is going to kind of make a little bit of noise in the north. So I would definitely say, however that shakes out between those two teams, I think you could definitely see a 3-5, a little bit of a closer gap if Laval comes out of that weekend and kind of shows like, okay, we did have a slow start, but we've been on a tear as of late. I mean, that might catch Syracuse by surprise. So I definitely say those two series are definitely ones to watch if you're talking about north when it comes to like north teams, and then inside of the division and also interdivisions as well against like I said, an Atlantic that could be very interesting in terms of measuring stick type games.
And I think you said it best in your last weekend when we kind of talked about this. This like if all goes according to like whoever's top seed, it will be Hershey versus Toronto, right? If things kind of the two top seeds from each combined, right, and kind of seeing which one of those is best will be very much so the measuring stick of how things are measured throughout this season. So that's where I kind of look at with this game coming up, the series coming up is, all right, can the first place Marlies, if they lose to the second place Charlotte in their division, that can really say a lot about the North Division A, but it can also say a lot about the playoff matchups to come. So, it'll be an interesting one for sure. My game of the week, it all comes down to San Diego, right? I think that San Diego's at the point of the season where they have nothing to lose. And I think that that's probably one of the most dangerous parts of the San Diego squad that's coming up now. So they'll have their first set against Coachella Valley Firebirds and then against Bakersfield. I expect Dostal to start against Coachella Valley. Dostal's a guy, I said it before, I'll say it again, he has the opportunity to change games. And not often goaltenders kind of have that, and not every goaltender in the league has that right now. But he has the ability to do that. He must have so much confidence coming from this AHL All-Star game into this series. And if they can just so happen to win against Coachella Valley and break that 5-game losing streak, they've won one game in their last 10. If they can win, it will be monumental for the San Diego Gulls. I said it before when they went out to Milwaukee. If they won, the confidence on that squad is there to say, you know what, we can win games, and this will be the weekend to do so.
Yeah, definitely. And if it's anything like the All-Star game, Dostal was really feeling it during that game, with his stretch passes. I think he's probably your safest bet if you were going to bet on a goaltender to score a goal or do something, outstanding like that. He'd be my bet for it. I mean, there's that one play he made in the All-Star game where he, made a diving poke check and then made a big glove save, drops the puck and just flips it up, makes a breakout pass, and they go in and score on it like right afterwards. I was like, man, this guy, as someone that doesn't see the Pacific Division all that much, I was like, and you're telling me he plays for San Diego? Like, you talk about kind of like an unsung hero in the American Hockey League just as a whole. He's kind of got my vote for it. So I thought that was just an insanely fun thing to kind of watch. And going along with what, Zach was saying about the Atlantic Division facing off of the North a bit there, obviously it's not the same. It was a, collection of players, but if it's anything like that, North Division, Atlantic Division game from the All-Star game, it should be pretty darn good, honestly, all things considered.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if Dostal plays like the way he did, I mean, who's to say that Anaheim might take a sniff at him and get some games up there as well? So if I was San Diego, yeah, you want to get wins, but you also don't want to fall into the, look what this guy's doing in San Diego right now. Let's give him some, give him some runs in the show and, see how he does against, the NHL type talent. So it's definitely worth one to watch. But I mean, he's a phenomenal goalie who's just unfortunately in a situation where you could have a San Diego Gulls team that could be a little bit better. But I mean, if he's like, if you have to have one player on your team to like steal games or make a case to make some noise and have eyeballs on him, it's definitely a good thing to be your goalie, because I mean, at the end of the day, you need a good goalie to win games and steal games for you. So if that's the guy you have right now as your best player, you can't go wrong with that at this point.
Okay, and so we do have an AHL free game of the week to talk about for you too. And there's a little bit of piggybacking off of what I was talking about earlier, as the free game of the week sees the Lehigh Valley Phantoms visiting the Hartford Wolfpack at XL Center in Hartford in a key divisional tilt. Even though we're only in February, I mean, the Phantoms, like we were saying in that volatile Atlantic Division standings, they really would like to get this win. So would Hartford, though, because a Phantoms win in regulation will give them a 4-point lead, while a Hartford regulation win evens it all up for that spot there and kind of doesn't count the Wolfpack out just yet. So you can catch that game for free on Friday starting at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, we also have live action on the Field Pass Hockey app. And here I am with the controls for the cash sound. Here we go. I have the controls for the cash sound, and I didn't even have it queued up. What am I doing? It's the top seed in the North Division going against the Charlotte Checkers when Toronto faces Charlotte from the Bowplex. It's a doubleheader. We talked about the importance and the significance of this game a little bit before, but it all starts Friday at 7 Eastern and then at 6 Eastern on Saturday. And you can download that on the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. And now it's time for the bonus round with Zach.
Yes. So Andrew was supposed to be doing this, but of course he wasn't here this week. So I got the keys of the car, and hopefully don't leave some dings or scrapes on the vehicle. So we'll see how this goes. But it is, since this is an All-Star Classic show, why don't we do an All-Star Classic bonus round? So I do have 3 questions. I don't have a tiebreaker. If we do a tiebreaker, we might have to go to rock, paper, scissors. Hopefully not. So this will definitely be interesting. So my first question for you guys is, who hosted the 2008 AHL All-Star Classic?
Oh, I know this. Do you want to go first, Corey? I know it's one of 2 teams.
2008. That's such a weird, a random year. I may be getting it.
I wanted the random as possible. I was like, let's just add some weird years, locations, winners, all that good stuff. It's like, want to have a little. We thrive on chaos. Let's make this a little chaotic for the All-Star Classic edition.
It wasn't Chicago, was it?
It was not Chicago.
I'll say Worcester.
It's not Worcester. All right, I'll give you guys one. I'll give you guys one more chance each. It's actually a team that technically got relocated.
Manchester?
It's not Manchester.
That's what my mind defaults to when I think of relocated teams.
Yeah, it's still in this. It's still AHL. It wasn't like a league change. It was just they went to a different city for the relocation.
Was it the year the Flyers organization hosted it?
No, it wasn't Lehigh Valley. So it was Binghamton was the host.
That's what it would have been.
Classic. Yep.
Because my first AHL All-Star game I've ever watched was the one that was in Worcester. And it was around that time. I believe it was, I thought it was 08, maybe it was 09. But I remember that was the first time I ever seen it. And there was talks of the AHL coming to St. John's. Wow, good stuff.
Yeah. So it was Binghamton was the 2008 All-Star Classic host for that year. I thought it was very interesting. I like the little bit of a switch because it's like no one would think of Binghamton because they're not with us right now. But you throw a little wrinkle into it. All right, so we're going to the 2011 All-Star Classic. Now I'm going to ask you guys this: who won the game, and who was the MVP that year for the 2011 AHL All-Star Classic?
I want to say the Western Conference won it.
If you get one of the two, I'll give you the point.
Didn't the Western Conference win that one?
I'll take East.
It was the East. The East did win 11-8. Now, let me ask you this for bonus points. Who got the MVP?
Is that the year Gibson? Was that the year of Gibson?
Nope. I'll give you guys two guesses on this one.
I should know this because I literally have a copy of that All-Star game on DVD upstairs in my house right now. That goes to show you how much I watched it because it was in Hershey.
Was that 2010 or 11 that was in Hershey?
It's 2011, I believe.
Wow. Good stuff.
I regret I didn't get to go to that one, unfortunately. But it was a little bit before. I was still in school at the time. So I didn't have my own job. I didn't have a car. I didn't have all the things to, be a season ticket holder back then. So I missed out on a couple of good things. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, bring it back to Hershey, man. Bring it back to Hershey, please.
I'm going to go out and I'm going to use my second guess. Eric O'Dell.
Nope. All right, Corey, this is for you. It's for you to tie it up before going to our last question.
Gosh. I guess I'll just go. I don't think I'm right with this one, but I'll just go on a guess and say Andrew Gordon.
Nope, that was not him. Was that your first guess or your second guess?
I don't think I've had a guess on it so far.
Okay, sorry. So you have one more.
I got it wrong with the conferences, so that's where I'm at so far. Yeah, I didn't think it was Gordo. He was the MVP of my heart because he was going around and giving away tickets to people and doing all these really great community things ahead of time there. Okay. Shoot, I can't even think of who all was in the lineups for those games.
Beyond me.
I don't even think it was a Hershey guy probably either, if I had to guess. I'll pass on it for right now. Just say I got nothing, honestly.
Bobby Butler.
See, I didn't even think of that name, but that makes sense. That makes sense.
It's been a while since I've heard that one.
Been a while. All right. 2013. Who won that game for the 2013 AHL All-Star Classic? And who was the MVP of that one as well?
Oy. See, anything more than a couple of years ago, I'm just it's in and out of the knowledge banks, that's for sure.
That was the.
I'll give you. It was in Providence.
Yeah, I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was, but I think I'm just thinking of when because I only thought of that because Providence beat Hershey in the playoffs that year.
That was the lockout year.
That was.
So that could be a lot of people. I bet he was an NHL star too who came back, wasn't he?
No.
It's got to be a niche one.
Yeah, that's going to be a toughie.
I will say that. I'll give you another hint. He had a letter on his jersey for this team.
That helps, but also doesn't help. Gosh.
Eric O'Dell. St. John's Ice Caps legend.
No.
I don't know.
Trying to think of who from Providence would have participated there.
Remember, you still got the conference to pick too. You got to pick the conference who won that game too.
Oh, they did conferences at that point too, didn't they?
Yeah, 2011 and 13 had the conferences. So yeah, so you got to pick. So it's still the conference is still up for grabs in the MVP. So you got one of your player picks left, and you still got two of the conference picks. Well,
was it still called the Pacific back then?
No.
No. Uh-oh.
So you get one conference pick because it's only two. So it's the one.
Oh, it's only two. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah. So you have one guess still of the conference, and you still got one guess of the player. Zach, Corey, you have 2 and 1.
I'm gonna go with the West again. I'm gonna say they won it.
I'll take the East. I went against them last time, but somehow I'm not confident in the East in that one still, though.
The Western Conference won with 11.5 seconds left.
Oh man.
Broke the 6-6 tie. So Zach is up 2-0, but Corey, if you're able to get the player, it won't be a complete sweep.
And we said it was a player with an A on their name or a letter at the very least.
It was a letter. Yeah. Honestly, if you can name the guy and the team, then will be a tie, and then we'll go for the tie break. So if you give me the guy and the team that he played for, Zach, same thing for you.
Jeez.
Guy, player and team, or a combination of either, because you're up 2-0 right now.
A year is a blur for me, man. The AHL was so. It's. I will say this. Well, Corey thinks the AHL was a way different time in 2013. There was a lot of NHL talent, and nobody knew what was going on besides, hey, Bunistrov is coming down to St. John's. Guess what? Have fun, right? Like,
all right, I'll say this though: the guy who scored the game winner was the MVP.
He said he had a letter on his jersey for the game or for his team.
For his team, the letter for his team, and he's the one that got the game. He got the game winner for the Western Conference.
In the West.
Mm-hmm. Western Conference won at 11.5 seconds left in the game, and there was a guy who was a lettered player for his team, who was also the MVP of the game. So yeah.
See, I remember some of the guys that played for there because it was still a weird mixture. Like there was still a lot of, at least a couple, I should say, Hershey guys that were still kind of around at that time, but playing for different teams.
Yeah,
but I feel like I'd remember that if it was a thing, though.
But at least you know it's the Western Conference that won, and it's the guy on that team that won it. So the MVP was a Western Conference player. You just got to remember who was in the West in 2013.
The one guy I don't remember why this sticks out to me, but as a former Hershey guy, I think he played for Abbotsford, if I'm not mistaken. Quentin Lang.
Nope.
Dang it, that was my best guess because that was one of the few ones I could think of.
So Zach, you still got one more. Corey, you got one more.
I'll have the pass. Especially given the solar system that the AHL has, seeing Western Conference players is a rarity, and even during that time.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel like it's like, nobody brings it up who won. Like, if we were talking like 2020, I'd be like, oh, yeah, the Atlantic Division won that, and it was Vitek Vanacek that won the MVPs. Like, I'd still remember that far at least, but like 2013, like it's just a whole different world.
That's what I'm saying. I wanted to bring a little bit of a chaos flair to this because it's the classic. You kind of have to go, a little crazy with it.
I remember when like Hershey. I remember that year for Hershey because Hershey was not that good. Like they really they barely squeaked into the playoffs and they almost beat Providence, but then they just got it was like a Rickroll pretty much, where it's like you're up 2-0, up, and then the video starts playing and they're out in 5 games. Oh, you know what? I'll lock in a guess here. Andrew Agazzino. Did he play that year?
No.
He played that year, right? He probably wasn't the guy, but
he was a forward though. He was a forward. It was Ryan Hamilton of the Toronto Marlies.
Oh, I wouldn't have gotten that then.
Mm-hmm.
Were they in the West?
Oh my gosh, that's such a trick question too, because that was when Toronto was still technically in the Western Conference for Lord only knows why reason, honestly.
Yep. He was the captain too. He was the captain of that team. Yep. Captain Ryan Hamilton won it with 11.5 seconds left.
I forgot they were in the West for a little while, but they weren't playing. They were playing a lot of Eastern teams, from what I remember. Toronto then.
So Zach, you do win because you got the conferences right of who won the 2011 and 13 games, but
when I think West, I think
it's tough.
I think to like the Abbotsfords of the world who were kicking around then, and even the teams in Texas that were still around as well. Well, on that pleasant note, folks, that is going to do it for us. It's been a great week. We do thank you for tuning in. We'd like to thank the Field Pass Hockey crew who were in Laval to bring you some excellent coverage. If you haven't seen any of it or you missed it, you want to recheck it again, you can head over to fieldpasshockey.com. We'll have more of that coming up. If you want to see or hear more of us, please subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We're on basically all of them here nowadays. We're also on Twitter at The Holy Grail. And we also have lots of other podcasts on the Field Pass Hockey Network. Inside the SPHL with James Hayes, we also have Matthew Marty and Jason Miles breaking down the ECHL's Wichita Thunder on a chat on a bi-weekly basis with some of the team's legendary players. The Rolling Thunder podcast airs bi-weekly on the Field Pass Hockey app and as well as the website. And Syracuse Speaks with Alexander Ackerman. Syracuse Speaks is a Syracuse-centric podcast which focuses on maintaining a balanced perspective on the ever-changing world of minor hockey. Well, we'd like to thank you so much for tuning in. On behalf of all of us here, have yourself a great night, and we'll see you back here in 7 short days.
This has been the Holy Grail Podcast. Have a question or topic suggestion? Hit us up on Twitter or drop us an email. For the latest news across the American Hockey League and the rest of minor league hockey, download the Field Pass Hockey app, now available in the Apple and Android app stores.
Deana Weinheimer, she's here.
Zack Power, how are you?